Okay. So Godzilla vs. Gigan, I think, is genuinely one of the most interesting movies in the Godzilla franchise so far. Not interesting in terms of its actual plot, like, oh, it's super deep, it's super complex, or anything like that. But because one of the most consistent complaints about Godzilla movies that I've had, Clay has had, I feel like a lot of people tend to have, is we just want to see the monsters more. I want it, like, when I watch a Godzilla movie, yes, if I have genuinely interesting human characters, look at the first movie, I'm completely invested in that. But I also just want to see Godzilla destroy shit. I want to see Godzilla fight a monster. I want to see something with a cool design, a fun scream slash war cry, beating the shit out of the king of the monsters and getting their ass kicked in turn. And Godzilla vs. Gigan seemingly delivers on that. The movie's an hour and a half. The first 30, 35, 40-ish minutes is basically all set up. And then, once you get to about the third to halfway mark, King Ghidorah and Gigan descend, they start destroying shit, and then Goji and Angudius roll up, and then you've got a 2v2 kaiju fight. I mean, I guess if you really want to say with each of Ghidorah's heads, it's more like a 4v2, but you've got, like, a team deathmatch kaiju fight, which sounds amazing. And it's got Ghidorah, who's a monster I really, really like. And have you seen Gigan? It's this dinosaur, bird, cyborg, cyclops with fucking scythe hands, who's constantly talking shit. He can fly, and he makes Godzilla bleed. He's got a belly button, like, buzzsaw. This dude is so fucking cool. And yet, I find myself disappointed. And that's what makes it so interesting. You give me two top-tier monsters, and almost half to two-thirds of the movie of cool shit, and I didn't care. And there's that one part of me that wonders, is that because they gave me too much monster? And maybe there is actually this really delicate balance. Like, you gotta see Godzilla do shit, but you can't see him do too much because it's boring. And the other 90% of me goes, no, that's not the problem. This fight just sucked. First of all, the editing is terrible. Which is not something I actively find myself saying in Godzilla movies. Like, when it comes to the fighting, I can generally follow the kaiju fights really well. But there's so many weird cuts at different points where I was like, huh? Like, they were just on the ground. I guess he got up. Oh, I guess he's getting away now, but it looked like he was getting his ass kicked. What the fuck just happened? There's also quite a bit of, like, stock or repeated footage. Like, there's this one move that Gigan keeps doing where he jumps and goes, bam, bam, and then he keeps destroying airplanes with it, and it's, like, the same frame every time of him doing that attack. You're like, alright, I mean, that's kind of fun and funny, but okay, I get it. And some of the scenes of, like, shit being destroyed and being burned, I'm like, okay, you just showed that, like, 2 minutes ago. Also, they'll just cut to clips from previous films. Like, one thing I noticed is, and I'll get to another stock footage point here in a second, the kaijus move really slow in this movie, which I don't super hate, because, you know, the idea of these big creatures, you know, having to, their movements being a bit more lumbering and calculated is something I can understand. And then we just cut to a scene from Three-Headed Monster where Godzilla's, like, doing footwork and fucking boxing Ghidorah. I'm like, this is not from the same movie, because Godzilla is moving very differently. What the hell? There's a point where, like, they're fighting, and then Ghidorah falls and destroys a bridge. I'm like, that's from Three-Headed Monster. There's no bridge anywhere near here. What the fuck? You've got the Angudius Skydrop, which was something I really liked, but that was from another movie. I want to see something different now. There's this one moment, like, speaking of them being slow, when Godzilla's walking toward Gigan, stops, slowly turns to hit him with a tail slap, and Gigan had about 5 to 7 business days to respond to this, and just sat there and took it, and it made no sense. Angudius. I thought he was kind of lame in Godzilla Raids Again, but there was some cool shit involved with him. Destruction of Osaka Castle. when he came back for Destroy All Monsters, here in my respect, the sky drop was funny as fuck. It also happened because he had Ghidorah by the neck, and like he ends up like just going to town on Ghidorah and Ghidorah's heads. It's not like he was doing, I don't know if he was the most like helpful monster in the fight, but he was genuinely doing his best, and he just like never gave up. He was a tenacious, persistent little shit, and it was great. Here, he is dead weight, and Gudius doesn't do shit. At the very, very end of the movie, he does this like flying tackle. You're like, cool, it only took you an hour and a half to be of any use. There's a scene. Okay, so first off, there's a scene where Godzilla and Gudius are talking, and not like, sorry, I don't know how to do a Godzilla roar, but like they're making movements and roaring and shit, and then there's speech bubbles, which is weird. And I know in the dub there's no speech bubbles, but actual fucking dialogue, and it happens twice, which is weird because there's other scenes where Godzilla's like motioning to Angudius and roaring, but there's no speech bubbles there, so it's inconsistent. Just what the fuck. Anyways, there's a point where Goji's like, hey, Angudius, it seems like the Monster Island again. He's like, hey, go to the shore, see what's up. And he does, and he actively gets repelled by the humans. Like, there's a lot of weapons there, don't get me wrong. We're like, wow, that actually worked. Man, my respect for Angudius has got to go down as of this movie. It's like, I don't know, he was 1-1, and now he's 1-2. Even Ghidorah in this movie, this was not a good showing. Like, he gets a few good moves in, but he doesn't really do a whole lot. There is this bit when Gigan's just beating the shit out of Godzilla, and Ghidorah's in the back just laughing. And that I thought was fun. I liked that. I appreciated that. But it was like, Gigan, again, I think is really cool. And when Gigan and Ghidorah first show up, and they're like doing this synchronized Blue Angels routine, so that was fun. And they're just destroying shit. Again, some of it was repeated footage, but I thought it was pretty cool. Again, like, I like seeing kaijus destroy shit. It's part of the fun of a kaiju movie. But the fight itself, I just thought was this poorly edited, full of reused footage mess. And Godzilla's just kind of getting his ass kicked for most of the film, or at least most of the fight. Which, I mean, I want to see Godzilla get some hits, but I want to, like, I want to see the monster beat his ass, and I want to see Godzilla beat its ass too. This felt really one-sided for most of the fight, and by the time Godzilla won, I was like, wait, really? Oh, there was this really cool thing when he grabs Ghidorah by all three of his heads and then just starts suplexing him, which again, it goes boom, alright, we gotta show it again, boom, now we gotta show it again, boom, but it was fun, I liked it. As for like our human characters, so there's this one dude who, when he first showed up, he had this really long hair, the like circle sunglasses, and I was just like, at a quick glance, I was like, is that John Lennon? Like, why the fuck does this dude look like John Lennon? And he gets our main human, I don't remember the humans' names, I'm sorry, but like, he gets the guy from behind, he's like, hey man, give me the thing, and then the dude faints, and it turns out the John Lennon dude didn't have a gun, he just had a piece of corn, and like put corn on the guys, but I don't know, I thought that was funny, I liked the corn guy. Our main antagonists in the movie, aside from Ghidorah and Gigan, are, I don't remember what they were called, I don't know if we ever got a name for them, but they're these aliens, it's not the Zillions, or whatever the fuck it was in Destroy All Monsters. It was these, Clay kept referring to Men in Black because they were these bug dudes, but they looked like humans. They actually assumed the identity of a couple of, like, dead guys. And it's like, oh, a form you're more comfortable with, and when you see their shadows, so like these big roach-looking monsters. I was like, oh, okay, that's actually kind of neat. That's kind of fun. And then when they take too much damage, they just turn back into giant bugs. I'm like, oh, well, I don't know. I feel like you kind of ruined it now. The idea that we saw the shadows, but didn't really see what they looked like was kind of fun, but no, like, they're just large bugs, and not even like, oh, but there's like a lot of cool design choice, like they're stylized. It's like, no, it's just a giant bug. Okay. Um, the way they go out is really funny, but really stupid. Where the main characters, who are like comic artists, so it doesn't come completely out of nowhere, but they're comic artists. So they essentially draw like a giant mural of themselves holding guns. They tape it to like an elevator door or like the inside of an elevator and put a bunch of TNT behind it. Send it up, and then when it goes to like the villain's lair, they see, oh look, it's our enemies with guns, and they start shooting and they blow up the TNT. it's, I mean, it's funny, but it's really fucking stupid. Like that's how that worked. There's this scene where they start repelling because of a balloon, and it's also kind of weird. And this movie's not very good. um, I like Gigan a lot. The fact that I actually saw Godzilla bleed, like, that was super neat. I won't lie. Gigan was fucking vicious. During the first, like, third half or so of the movie, Clay and I were both saying it's like, this one's considered not very good. I mean, it's been fine so far. It's pretty likable. And then we see the monsters destroying shit. I'm like, yeah, this is fun. I'm having a good time. And then as it keeps going, I'm like, bro, this fight is bad. Like, I think of Kong versus Godzilla, which is a movie that I don't think is very good or all that entertaining. And then you get the last 15 or so minutes of Kong and Godzilla fighting, and it's amazing. Like, in my head, I'm like, the entire movie, as bad and, like, just not good as it is worth it for that climax, because the climax is so fucking fun. And this is a movie that's almost all climax. So, like, it's almost fun. It's just not.